Driving through the Appalachian backroads late at night, somewhere between western North Carolina and the eastern edge of Kentucky. We'd spent the day at my aunt's place near Asheville. Lane had dozed off not long after we passed a faded county sign for McCreary, barely readable. It was early fall, October 12th, I remember that now, and even though the air wasn't cold yet, there was a stillness to it that felt colder than it actually was. Like everything had already shut down for the season. We hadn't passed another car in over an hour when I saw him. At first, I thought it was a tree stump or maybe some garbage, just a blur on the shoulder. But then I saw the arms move. He was waving, both arms high above his head. Wide, exaggerated movements. Like someone desperate to be seen. I braked harder than I meant to, and Lane snapped awake, disoriented. He blinked at me, then looked out the window and saw the man too. The guy looked like he was in his 50s, maybe older. Thin, kind of hunched. He wore a dirty canvas vest over a thermal shirt that had seen better years. His jeans were torn at the cuffs, the knees caked in dried mud. There wasn't any blood or obvious injury, but he looked frayed, like a scarecrow that had been left out too long. I cracked the driver's window just a little. Not much, just enough to hear him. "You okay?" I asked. He stepped closer than I was comfortable with. "I need help. My wife's stuck. Car broke down just up the gravel road. Won't take but a minute." He said it too quickly, like a line he'd practiced. That last part, "won't take but a minute," hit me sideways. There was something too casual about it, too rehearsed. Like he wanted us to think it was nothing. "No big deal. Just a quick favor." Lane muttered, "Nope," under his breath, barely loud enough for me to hear. I hesitated. Everything in me wanted to keep driving, but something, maybe guilt, maybe the way the guy looked like he really had been walking a while, made me say, "Hold on." I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder and killed the engine. We followed him down a narrow dirt turnoff, just barely wide enough for a car. The trees got denser almost immediately, branches low and crooked like they were reaching out. No lights, no stars, just our footsteps crunching over loose gravel and twigs. Lane was walking close behind me, not saying much, and I could feel his unease in the way his footsteps stayed perfectly in sync with mine. The guy was ahead of us, maybe 10 feet, moving fast. He kept talking, but it wasn't directed at us. Just this low, muttering stream of words. Some of it sounded like numbers, some like he was naming things. 19, broken pipe, 2 lanes, she said, "Don't wait." Stuff like that, it didn't make sense. Like a monologue with no audience. After maybe 2 minutes, we saw the car. It was a beat-up blue station wagon. Looked like it hadn't moved in years. The hood was open, but the rest of the car was sealed tight. No lights on, no one visible inside. Lane leaned in close to me and whispered, "Where's the wife?" I asked the guy directly. "Is she in the car?" He didn't stop walking, just moved around to the back of the wagon without responding. I asked again, louder, "Hey, where is she?" He stopped then, turned slowly, like he was just now hearing me for the first time. "I don't know what you mean," he said. And it was blank, like a line delivered with no emotion, no real confusion, just emptiness. Lane grabbed my arm. "We're done," he said, dead serious. "We're leaving." I didn't argue. I nodded and turned, and that's when the guy moved to block our path. "Just check the back," he said. "It's jammed. Just look." His voice was different now. No more nerves, no more pleading, just flat and cold. "No," I said, and took a step back. Lane didn't wait. He was already walking. I followed. The man didn't move. He just watched us leave. We made it back to the car faster than we'd arrived. I don't even remember unlocking the doors. I must have hit the fob out of instinct. The second we were inside, I threw it in reverse and spun back toward the main road, tires spinning gravel behind us. And then we saw him. About 2 minutes later, as we turned onto the road, the headlights lit up a figure walking just ahead. Same guy, same vest, same torn shirt, same hunched walk. Only now he wasn't coming from the woods. He was heading toward us, from the direction we were driving, like he'd been there the whole time, waiting for us to return. Lane shouted, "No way, no way," and I swerved wide, barely avoiding him. As we passed, He turned his head and just stared. Didn't speak, didn't flinch, just watched. We didn't say anything for a long time after that. 10 minutes, maybe more. The silence was thick, not just between us but around us, like we'd driven into a place where noise didn't belong. Then Lane broke it. Real quiet, almost like he was afraid to say it. "Does the car feel heavier?" I didn't answer at first. I didn't want to. But yeah, it did. Not dramatically, not like something was dragging us down, but there was a different pull when I accelerated, like the balance had shifted. He said, "Check the back." I pulled off under the glow of a flickering streetlight outside an old bait shop. Closed, dark windows, handwritten hours on the door. I popped the trunk. We both got out. It looked empty. But the smell, God, the smell. Like earth and mold and something sweet, cloyingly sweet, like overripe fruit that had gone soft and started to ferment. It hit so hard I actually gagged. Lane stepped back and muttered something I didn't catch. I slammed the trunk shut without looking again. We didn't talk until we were inside the motel room, an hour down the road. Lane went straight to the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and just stared at the wall, trying to talk myself down. Maybe we'd imagined most of it. Maybe it was just stress, late-night panic, dehydration. Any explanation would do. For months after, I always checked the rearview mirror. Every time. I was working nights for a regional courier service that specialized in lab runs, basically hauling medical samples between small-town clinics and bigger testing labs. That Friday started out the same as any other. I picked up a box of blood samples from a clinic in Clary Ridge, Kentucky, around 10:30 at night. The place was practically shuttered when I got there, just one sleepy nurse behind the desk who handed me the box without a word. From there, I was headed to Darnell, West Virginia. About an hour into the drive, things started to feel off. I was somewhere between Mill Grove and Laxton, deep in the wooded stretch of Route 17. At first, it looked like a shadow, just a dark shape low to the ground, pacing me from behind at a distance. No lights, no sound, nothing to suggest another vehicle. It wasn't close, just there. A soft outline against the black, like something not fully solid. I blinked, thought maybe it was just a weird trick of the mirror or a smudge catching the light. I adjusted the mirror. Still there, closer. It didn't make sense. I rolled down the window a few inches, hoping the cold air would snap me awake, and leaned out just enough to listen. Nothing. Just wind and the hollow whoosh of trees. I tapped the brakes gently to see if anything would react. The shape vanished. Just gone. I stared for another 10 seconds, heart ticking a little faster now, then eased back into the drive. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd been on this road one too many times and my brain was just filling in the dark with nonsense. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. You know how sometimes you walk into a room and feel like you've forgotten something important, even though everything looks fine? It was like that, but stretched across 20 miles of silence and curve after curve of empty road. I didn't stop again until I reached a 24-hour gas station just outside of Burnell. Usual place. Bright fluorescence, a vending machine that never worked, and a bathroom that always smelled like mildew. I grabbed a stale sandwich and checked the back of the van just out of habit. The sample box was still there, sealed up, labels intact. Everything exactly how it should be. I walked around the van slowly, checking for scratches or dents. Nothing. Tires were fine. No signs that anything or anyone had touched the vehicle. Back on the road, I turned off the music. I didn't want background noise anymore. I wanted to hear everything. The route narrowed again as I headed into the final stretch. Lots of tight turns and blind spots. That's when the shape came back. Every time I glanced at the mirror, it was there. A little closer. Then a little closer again. I couldn't make out details, but it was wrong. Too fast for a human, too controlled for an animal. Like it knew exactly how to stay in the shadows. At one point, I swear I saw it dart off the road and melt into the trees. I floored it, probably 5 or 6 miles, engine groaning, until I spotted a pickup pulled onto the shoulder. hazards flashing. Someone was standing next to it. A guy, maybe mid-40s, wearing a camo jacket and jeans, holding a red gas can. I slowed, rolled down the window about halfway. "Need a ride?" I called out. The guy didn't answer right away. He just stared, not at me, but past me, into the back of the van. His mouth opened slightly like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Then, finally, he shook his head. "No," he said, stepping back a little. "Not with you." "You sure?" He backed away another step and didn't say another word. I drove off, didn't even question it. Just kept my eyes on the road and didn't check the mirror again for a while. But then the smell hit me. It came out of nowhere, like wet fur that had been left out in the sun, mixed with this sharp metallic edge. It filled the cabin so fast I gagged. I cracked the window, thinking maybe I'd hit something and it had lodged under the wheel well. But the smell didn't go away. It clung to me the rest of the way to Darnell. When I finally pulled into the lab and handed off the samples, the tech on shift gave me this weird look. "You all right?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I shrugged it off. Didn't have the energy to explain whatever that drive had been. I went straight to the motel, dropped my stuff on the floor, and crashed. But sleep didn't help. I had this dream that night, or maybe it was more like a memory that hadn't happened yet. I was standing behind a van. The doors were open. The sample box was gone, and something else was inside, curled up tight in the corner. I couldn't see it clearly, but I could hear it breathing. Slow, wet, steady. I woke up drenched in sweat, pulled off the covers and saw scratches all up and down my arms. Not deep, but fresh. Thin lines like I'd brushed past brambles. I tried to explain it away. Maybe I'd scraped myself moving boxes. Maybe I'd bumped into something without noticing. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. What really stuck with me more than the dream or the scratches was that man on the roadside. The way he looked at the van. The way he backed away without another word. I ran the return trip during daylight. Bright, clear, uneventful, no shape, no smell, no strange dreams. The scratches faded after a few days, and for a while, I thought that was the end of it. I told myself it was stress, maybe burnout. Long shifts, isolation, it messes with you. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Next time I got a night shift on that same route, I rerouted myself, added a full hour of extra driving just to avoid that stretch near Laxton. Nobody questioned it. Dispatch didn't care as long as the samples got where they needed to go. That worked for about 2 weeks. Then they shuffled our assignments again, and I got Clary Ridge. Same pickup, same destination, same roads. I stared at the dispatch sheet for a full minute before deciding to go. Told myself it was one run. I'd done it dozens of times before. Maybe nothing would happen. It was fine at first. Then I hit that same stretch of road, and it was there again, but not in the mirror this time. It was in the trees, off to the right, just beyond the ditch. Not hiding, not moving, just crouched low, like it had been waiting. Its limbs were long, thin, jointed in ways that didn't look right. The skin looked brittle, dry like bark or old paper. I didn't see a face, just this smooth, hollowed shape where a face should have been. It turned its head slowly as I passed. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. When I got to the lab, the tech looked at the sample box and hesitated. "Was this frozen?" she asked, frowning. "No." She touched the lid and pulled her hand back. "It's ice cold. Like, colder than it should be." She flagged it for contamination. I didn't say a word, just nodded and left. I've been on leave since. Burned through some PTO. Told dispatch I wasn't doing Clary Ridge anymore. I just wrapped up a short-term teaching gig down in Phelan Ridge, and instead of heading straight back up to Pennsylvania, I figured I'd take the scenic route. Just a slow, winding drive through the back roads of the Smokies. Somewhere past a town called Larkhill, my GPS froze. The last place I had signal was right after this old gas station tin roof, beat-up pumps, hand-painted open sign flapping against the siding. After that, nothing. The map on my screen just locked up. I figured I'd lost coverage, no big deal. The road was pretty straightforward, just 2 lanes cutting through thick trees with no real turns. About 20 minutes later, I heard this thudding sound coming from the back. Not loud, but steady, like something knocking around in the trunk. I pulled over, popped it open, expecting to find my suitcase had tipped over or something, but everything was packed in tight. Nothing out of place. It was quiet again when I got back on the road, so I chalked it up to the car settling or whatever. Then I passed this sign, white metal, mounted on an old post, Hollow Creek, 4 miles. I didn't remember seeing that town on my earlier route check. I slowed down, thinking maybe I'd missed a turn, but the road just kept winding, no intersections, no lights, just trees, no houses, not even a mailbox. A little ways down, my headlights caught something up ahead in the road. I braked fast. It looked like a trash bag or maybe an old tarp, just this dark, bulky shape right in the middle of the lane. I got out to move it, but the second I stepped onto the pavement, it was like everything around me just stopped. Not in a quiet country night kind of way, dead quiet. No breeze, no insects. Not even that distant hum you usually don't notice until it's gone. The thing turned out to be a jacket. Heavy, soaked, like it had been sitting in a creek for a week. I nudged it off the road with my foot and suddenly felt this cold pressure in my chest, like I needed to get back in the car right now. I didn't look around, didn't think twice, just got in and hit the gas. A minute later, my dashboard screen glitched and went black. Then the cabin lights dimmed. The engine kept running, but everything else just faded out. No radio, no display, no display. Like the car was going into some sort of power-saving mode. I started feeling weird, lightheaded, like I'd been awake for days, but I'd only been driving for a couple hours tops. Then came another sign, Hollow Creek, 3 miles. That stopped me cold. I hadn't turned, hadn't looped back. There was only one road. But now, somehow, the town was further away. I drove another few minutes. Another sign, Hollow Creek, 4 miles. I pulled over and shut off the engine. Just sat there, keys in hand, telling myself I was tired. I literally said it out loud, "You're tired. You missed something." But I hadn't touched the wheel. No exits. No forks. Just that same winding strip of blacktop. I turned the key again. Everything blinked back to life like normal, except the GPS was still frozen. I kept going, a little slower now, scanning the trees. Then I crossed this narrow bridge. No water, just a dry ditch underneath, and saw a house for the first time since leaving Larkhill. Small place, tucked just inside the tree line. No porch light, but there was a faint orange glow in one window, like a candle or a lamp left on low. I passed it. Then maybe 30 seconds later, I crossed the same bridge again. Same ditch, same house, same dim window. This time, I slammed the brakes. I pulled over and just stared at the place, killed the headlights, waited, and then I saw movement inside. Just a figure, couldn't tell much, passing by the window. A second later, the porch light flicked on. Not instantly. It buzzed for a second like one of those old sensor lights. But I hadn't moved. I was way too far away to have triggered it. And the bulb was orange, not the usual white glow. More like a street lamp from the 70s. I reversed, slow and steady. When I swung the car around, my rear view caught a figure standing right where I'd just driven. One person, completely still. No details, just black. I didn't wait, just hit the gas. The road changed after that. The pavement gave way to loose gravel, no shoulder, no lines. I told myself I must have veered off the main route, but it didn't feel that way. Then the sign came up again, Hollow Creek, 4 miles. This time, it was leaning at an angle, and someone had carved something into the wood beneath it. YOU past it T. That's when I started to panic. I switched off the radio, didn't even realize it was still on, and tapped at the GPS again. Still locked. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 10:23, same as before. It hadn't moved. I spotted a small turnout up ahead and pulled over again. Got out, took my flashlight and walked a few feet down the road just to clear my head. The gravel looked untouched, no tire marks, not even my own, like the road had been reset. I turned back toward the car and the driver's side door was wide open. I never leave it open. Ever. I walked back slow, calling out once. Hey, it echoed too loud. No bounce, no trees rustling, nothing. Inside, the dome light was on, and sitting on the passenger seat was a single black glove. Not mine. I don't even wear gloves when I drive. I didn't touch it. Just got in, closed the door hard, and turned the key. As soon as the headlights came back on, I saw him again, standing just past the bend. He was closer now, tall, wearing what looked like a long brown coat or some old uniform, shoulders too wide. His face looked stretched, like the skin didn't quite fit the bone underneath. Not deformed, just wrong, like he was trying to pass for human and hadn't nailed it. I swerved around him, didn't slow down. The road was still off, no markers, no signs. Just this endless stretch of gravel cutting through nothing. Then, finally, I saw light through the trees. A gas station. The same gas station. I stayed there until it was light out. Didn't even try to drive until the sun was high. Took the interstate all the way home. Straight shot. No stops. And I never went back to that area. I was 28 when this happened. I remember because it was the year I finally ditched office life and started working remotely. Everything felt kind of wide open that summer, and Caleb and I had both hit that weird post-pandemic drift where jobs were flexible, plans were loose, and every conversation turned into, what if we just went somewhere for a week? So we did. Pittsburgh, of all places. His cousins lived up there. Cool people, old row house, good food. We crashed for a while, caught up, hit some breweries. It was a solid trip. No drama, no weird vibes. Just one of those stretches where you let your guard down and kind of forget that anything bad can actually happen. We left on a Thursday night to head down to Asheville. The idea was to break up the trip, maybe get there by early morning, check into the Airbnb, and just sleep the day away. Caleb offered to drive first, and I knocked out somewhere near Morgantown. I woke up again when we stopped for gas at a Sheetz in Oak Hill, and we switched. He passed out in the back, using a hoodie as a pillow, curled up like a cat. I remember checking the time just after 2 in the morning. The road was empty. I mean, really empty. We were on Route 19, somewhere deep in southern West Virginia. It's a stretch of highway that snakes through the hills, mostly forest and old mining towns that look like time forgot them. No cell reception, no rest stops, just darkness and trees on either side. The only noise in the car was a lo-fi playlist I had running at low volume and the occasional rattle of the windows when we hit a bump. I've driven that highway at least a dozen times. I thought I knew it. Same faded billboards, same gas stations that double as bait shops. You learn to keep an eye out for deer and not to trust the GPS too much. That night, though, something felt slightly off. Not scary exactly, just different. It started with the signs. The first one popped up clean and white on the right shoulder. Looked brand new, like it hadn't even collected dust yet. Clifftown, 4 miles. I read it out loud without really thinking. Clifftown? Never heard of it. I figured maybe it was some unincorporated spot with a church, a bar, and a forgotten post office. Places like that are scattered all through the hills. You don't notice them unless you have to. 4 miles later, I passed what must have been the turnoff. It was easy to miss. Just a narrow road that ducked off into the trees with a crooked sign barely hanging on a rusted pole. Clifftown Road, no lights, no buildings. Just that sign, some overgrown shoulder grass, and forest. I slowed a little, just out of curiosity, but I didn't turn. Just watched it disappear in the rearview mirror and kept going. About 10 minutes after that, another sign. Same pristine white background, same sharp lettering, Clifftown, 2 miles. Now that made me frown. I did the math in my head. I'd already passed the turn. We should have been heading farther away, not closer. I even glanced at the GPS, still blank. No service, no route, just a little dot floating in limbo. Another 10 minutes. Another sign. Clifftown, 2 mile. That's when I pulled over. It wasn't even a conscious decision. My hands just sort of tightened on the wheel, and next thing I knew, I was easing the car onto the shoulder. I sat there for a minute, letting the engine idle, staring out at the trees. There was a mist starting to curl along the ground, right at the edge of the headlights. It wasn't fog exactly. It didn't feel natural. It sat too still, didn't drift or rise. The air inside the car felt thicker. My chest was tight, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing. I glanced back at Caleb. He hadn't moved. Still bundled up, breathing slow, mouth slightly open. I almost called his name, but the sound caught in my throat. It felt wrong to speak. Like if I said something, I might invite something in. So I didn't. I just put the car back in drive and kept going. A few minutes later, another sign appeared in the beam of the headlights. Clifftown, now entering. I checked the clock. It was after 3. That didn't track. The last hour felt like 20 minutes. The signs kept coming. Welcome to Clifftown. Please drive slowly. No town. Not even a hint of one. But the signs acted like we were already there. I eased off the pedal, not because of the signs, but because something in me said, don't go faster. Like the road itself would punish me for it. The trees felt closer now, physically closer. Like the forest had inched in on both sides. The branches were longer, the shadows deeper. Still, Caleb hadn't moved. I called his name once, then again, nothing. I reached back and nudged his leg. He didn't wake up. His breathing was steady, but flat, like he wasn't fully here. That's when I saw the first person. Just past the Children at Play sign, standing at the edge of the trees. Barefoot, long hair hanging in ropes. Shirtless, just standing there, staring. He didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched the car roll by with his mouth hanging slightly open, like he'd been caught in the middle of a sentence and forgot what he was saying. I didn't slow down. A minute later, another one, a woman this time, standing crooked, swaying a little, her arms limp at her sides. She locked eyes with me as I passed. Her eyes were completely black, no whites, no reflections, just black. I pressed the gas. The road dipped and twisted, sharper now. Tires squealed once. I didn't care. The faster I went, the more figures I saw. A child with a balloon that didn't move. A man kneeling next to a frozen dog, both perfectly still. An older woman seated in a rocking chair on the shoulder of the road, gently swaying, but the chair never rocked. None of them blinked, none of them breathed, just lined up like mile markers, watching. Then the houses appeared, all at once. Identical white houses, spaced neatly apart, each one with a black door and no lights. No mailboxes, no driveways, just rows of perfect, soulless homes like they'd been printed and dropped into place. I didn't stop. At the center of the town, if you could even call it that, there was a massive church. It had a tall, narrow spire that pointed straight up, but no cross, no markings. The road looped into a roundabout that circled the church 3 times. I didn't touch the wheel, I swear to God. It turned on its own. I stayed silent, held my breath, waited. When the loop ended, I kept driving. Same black trees, same heavy silence. Then, all at once, Caleb gasped. It was violent, like he'd been yanked out of deep water. He sat up, eyes wide, looking around like he didn't recognize anything. "We're not in North Carolina," he said. I didn't respond. 15 minutes later, we passed a sign I actually recognized. Summersville Bis 2 miles. We'd somehow circled back. The gas tank was down by a quarter. More than it should have been. We'd lost over an hour, maybe more. Caleb remembered nothing. Said the last thing he recalled was getting gas at Sheets. That was it. We got to Asheville around 9 in the morning. Checked into the Airbnb. Didn't talk about it. Just crashed for the rest of the day. That night, while unpacking, I found something wedged into the lining of my duffel bag. A single sheet of paper. White. Crisp. Looked freshly printed. "Welcome to Clifftown." I didn't even hesitate. I crumpled it, tossed it into the trash, locked the door, and didn't leave that apartment until the sun was up again. This happened a few years ago, somewhere in the Appalachian foothills, a little past midnight. I'd been driving all evening, trying to get home after a visit with my cousin in Clayton. There'd been a multi-car pileup on the main interstate, so I rerouted through back roads. GPS was barely hanging on, signal kept cutting in and out, but I figured as long as I kept moving west, I'd eventually hit a familiar highway. I wasn't in a hurry. I just wanted to get clear of the mess and find a gas station before the tank dipped into dangerous territory. The detour started off fine, quiet stretches, empty roads, lots of trees. But somewhere around hour 3, things started to feel weird, not spooky, just hollow, like I'd driven out of time or something. I checked my phone again. No bars, battery at 30%. I was starting to get nervous about fuel needle hovering just above empty when I finally saw a wooden marker at a fork in the road, the kind of sign that probably hadn't been replaced in 30 years. Straight ahead, High Creek, 21 miles. To the left, Braddock, 6 miles. 6 miles sounded a whole lot better than 21, so I took the left. Didn't even hesitate. It didn't feel like a decision, honestly. More like momentum. Like I was already turning before I really thought it through. I don't even remember checking the GPS, which wasn't like me at all. The road curved sharply left, then dropped into this dense patch of forest that swallowed the sky. No stars, no moonlight. Just trees packed tight on either side. Closing in, I slowed down, half expecting to come across a fallen branch or a washed-out bridge. The gravel under my tires shifted constantly, like the road was trying to slide out from under me. Eventually, the trees pulled back a little, and I rolled into a clearing where a few crooked buildings sat like broken teeth around a dirt lot. There was a sign by the road, white paint flaking off metal. "Welcome to Braddock." Looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. There weren't any streetlights, but I spotted one blinking yellow bulb hanging above what looked like an old general store. Windows were boarded. Door chained shut. A few other buildings leaned inward like they were trying to escape the cold. The only place with any signs of life was a small diner across the lot. One truck sat parked outside, a weather-beaten red Ford with muddy tires. The lights inside the diner were on soft yellowish glow that flickered slightly, like maybe the power wasn't all that stable. I figured, okay, someone's awake. Maybe they've got a phone. Maybe even gas. So I pulled up next to the truck and got out. It was weird how quiet it was. Not peaceful. Just off. No wind. No bugs. No hum of power lines. Just silence, like someone had pressed pause on the world. I opened the diner door and stepped inside. Place looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. Red vinyl booths, metal napkin dispensers, old photos of fishing trophies on the walls. No customers. No one behind the counter. No music. Just this low hiss from the coffee machine. I stood there for a bit, waiting for someone to come out from the back. Nothing. I called out. "Hello?" Still nothing. And then the smell hit me. Not food. Not grease or coffee. More like damp wood, wet earth, something sour underneath. Like a basement that had flooded, dried out, and never quite recovered. It wasn't overpowering, but it made me take a step back. I glanced behind the counter. Still no one. But the coffee pot was steaming, half full. Fresh, judging by the smell. The machine let out a soft puff every few seconds, like it was breathing. I was just starting to think maybe I should leave when I heard a door creak open behind the kitchen. A man walked out. Tall, thin, maybe in his 60s. He wore a denim coat that looked handmade, stitched together from different scraps, dark and uneven. His white hair was thin and combed straight back. He had the kind of face that didn't show much, like someone who'd stopped bothering with facial expressions a long time ago. He looked at me and gave the tiniest nod. "Coffee's fresh," he said. Voice flat, low, like he hadn't used it in a while. I asked if there was a gas station nearby. He didn't answer right away, just stared at me, eyes steady, like he was deciding something. Then he said, "No station here. You came in on the old logging road?" "Yeah," I said, a little confused. He scratched his chin slowly. "Only one way out now," he said. "And you didn't take it." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, he pointed toward the booth by the window. "Best sit down," he said. "Don't move till the truck leaves." I turned to look outside, expecting to see something, but my car was still the only vehicle out there. "What truck?" I asked. He didn't respond. Just stepped behind the counter, lifted the coffee pot with both hands, and poured 2 mugs. His hands trembled slightly as he slid one across the table and sat across from me. "Folks come through here sometimes," he said quietly. Takes a while for him to figure out they shouldn't have. That gave me pause. "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't explain. He just said, "When the truck comes, don't look inside. Don't wave. Don't get out." I tried to laugh it off. Said I didn't believe in spooky nonsense, just needed directions and gas. He looked me dead in the eye. "You'll get neither," he said. "But if you do like I said, you'll leave. If you don't, you won't." I didn't touch the coffee. A minute or 2 passed in silence. Then I saw it. Light sweeping through the trees on the far side of the clearing. Headlights, but too high, too wide. The man didn't look up, just slid deeper into the booth, hands folded on the table, eyes fixed on nothing. The truck pulled into view. It was huge, bigger than any semi I'd ever seen. Flat black, no markings. The cab was tall, angular. The trailer had no doors, just smooth panels, matte and dull, like it had been scrubbed clean of any identity. It didn't pull in. It stopped sideways across the lot, blocking the road completely. The engine stayed on, low and steady. No revving. Just a thick, guttural hum that seemed to buzz in my ribs. I looked at the windshield. Couldn't see the driver. Just glare, reflections, and maybe movement. Like shapes pressed too close to the glass. Too many shapes. Faces maybe, or the suggestion of them. Then the door cracked open. Only a sliver, but it was enough. I heard something. Not a voice, not breathing. Just this dry, crackling hiss, like paper tearing in reverse, like someone whispering through dirt. I didn't move, not an inch. I stared at the table, at my reflection in the black coffee I wasn't drinking. My hands were gripping the edge of the booth without me realizing it. My legs felt like stone. The man across from me didn't move either. The sound faded. The door shut. The truck didn't turn around, didn't back up. It was just gone, like a frame had been cut from a film. Silence returned. The man stood, picked up both mugs, and poured them down a drain behind the counter. "You'll leave now," he said without looking at me, "and you won't come back." I didn't argue. I walked out, got in my car, and floored it out of there. Didn't matter that the road was barely holding together. I didn't stop, not even when I saw something, on the shoulder ahead. A woman, I think, waving her arms like she was on fire. Her dress looked torn. Her hands were too long. I didn't slow down. I didn't look at her face. I hit the highway with the gas light blinking. Coasted into a station about 10 miles later. The clerk behind the counter looked half asleep, but when I asked if he'd heard of Braddock, he woke up fast. He said no, never heard of it. Lived there all his life. That summer, I'd taken on a bunch of overnight delivery shifts through southern West Virginia, mostly back roads and rural drops. Just me, an old company van, and long stretches of dark highway. No traffic, no real deadlines, nobody breathing down my neck. They'd given me this dented old Dodge with mismatched doors and a faded paint job. The back was stripped down, just a steel floor and a cargo cage bolted behind the seats. It rattled whenever I turned too hard, and the front left blinker worked only if I smacked the side panel just right. The radio knob was busted, so I had to wedge a wadded napkin under it to keep the signal from cutting out. But the thing ran, and I knew how to handle it. Didn't ask questions, didn't cause trouble. I just drove. That night, I was coming back from a late drop near Hope's Ferry. I'd taken a couple back roads before, but this route was completely new to me. One of those little state roads that doesn't even have a proper shoulder, just cracked pavement, weeds eating the edges, and trees leaning so close they almost touched overhead. It was just after 2:30 in the morning. The GPS screen showed a straight shot for the next hour, but right then, it told me to turn. The sign was small, rusted at the bolts, with paint chipped off around the edges. White letters, barely legible. It said, Caraway Road. I didn't think twice. I was tired. It was late. GPS said it would shave 20 minutes off the route, so I turned. Right away, I noticed how narrow it was. Barely enough room for the van. The trees pressed close on both sides, like they were watching. I figured it would widen out in a bit, but it didn't. There were no houses, no mailboxes. No gravel driveways leading off anywhere, just woods. A few minutes in, I hit something with the front wheels. Sharp bump, like a chunk of concrete or a big branch, but when I looked in the rear view, there was nothing there. I slowed a little, thinking maybe I should have turned around, but the GPS still said I was on course. Then came the curve, a sharp right. Pretty steep. I eased into it and kept driving. Less than a minute later, another right. Same kind of turn. Tight angle, almost identical. I slowed more and glanced at the screen, but it had started to flicker. Not like a full glitch, just a jitter every few seconds. Like the map couldn't decide how to redraw the road. The third curve was exactly the same. Another sharp right. I started to feel uneasy. Something about the repetition. It wasn't just the angles, it was everything. Same pattern of trees. Same crumbling guardrail. I even recognized a weird stump by the edge of the ditch that looked like a twisted animal leg. I passed it again, and again. By the fourth time, I said out loud, "Okay, that's weird." The fifth curve came, then the sixth, each one identical. Every time I turned, I looked for differences, anything. But there was the same barkless tree on the left, same faded mile marker, same bent road sign with the corner chipped. I pulled off to the side and turned off the van. I just sat there for a bit. My fingers were still on the wheel, but I wasn't gripping it anymore. It was dead quiet. I mean, really quiet. No bugs, no breeze, no engine ticking down. Just a thick silence that settled into my chest. Clock on the dash read 3:15. I opened the door and stepped out to stretch, thinking maybe I was overreacting. It was probably just one of those looping mountain roads that looks the same from every angle. I've driven worse. But the second I stepped out, I noticed something off. The air wasn't cold. In the hills at night, it's always cold, even in summer. But this, it was flat, still, like I'd stepped into a vacuum. I walked around the front of the van, nothing but trees and road and blackness beyond the headlights. I half expected to see a house light way off in the woods, or maybe even another car. Nothing. I got back in and started to turn around, figuring I'd retrace my path and take a longer route if I had to. Drove maybe 4 minutes. Then it showed up again, that same curve, same right turn, same angle. Except this time, the slope was reversed. Instead of the slight drop from before, the road tilted uphill. And when I looked for that stump again, it was there. But on the same side it had been last time, not reversed like it should have been. I was turning right, but nothing about the landscape flipped. It hit me all at once. I wasn't just looping. The road was resetting and rearranging itself while I moved. I stopped again, turned off the lights, sat in the dark with my eyes closed. My heartbeat was loud, not racing exactly, just steady and uncomfortable, like my body knew something before I did. Then it happened. Something moved behind the van. Not like footsteps, not rustling leaves. It was a shift in the air, like a pressure wave passing over the back of the van. I felt it in my ears, like they popped slightly. I held my breath, turned around fast. Both side mirrors were black, not just dark. Black. They didn't reflect anything. Not the trees, not the van, not me. I slowly leaned toward the rearview mirror, angled it down, and caught my face. Or what I thought was my face. It looked normal at first, but then I noticed the head was slightly tilted. I adjusted mine. The image moved half a second late. I turned my head right. The image lagged. I stopped moving and waited. The thing in the glass caught up, slowly. Then it smiled. I didn't. My mouth didn't move. But the reflection smiled at me like it had been waiting. I didn't think. I punched the mirror. It snapped off with a sharp crack and landed in the passenger footwell. That was it. I floored the gas and didn't care which way the road bent anymore. The tires squealed on the pavement. My foot stayed glued to the pedal. The van groaned, but I didn't let up. The trees blurred past, and in between them, I started seeing flashes of something. Not animals. Not headlights. Not headlights. Thin, pale shapes slipping between trunks, long-limbed and too fast. I didn't look at them. My hands were shaking on the wheel, but I didn't ease off. I told myself I'd crash if I had to. Better that than stopping again. At some point, the road dipped too hard, and I hit a turn wrong. The van slid, tilted, and the front tires slammed into soft earth. Mud. The engine sputtered and died. I was at the base of a small hill. Just dead brush and thorns in front of me, lit by the headlights. I didn't want to get out. I stayed in the seat, staring at the ignition. Then I heard it. Something brushing the back window. Soft. Long strokes, not fingernails. Not scratching. More like the edge of a sleeve or a piece of cloth being dragged over the glass. I turned slowly. Nothing. I blinked. There it was. A hand. Inside the van. Pressed against the wire mesh behind the seats, just past my head. The divider was still locked, and it was behind it. Fingers too long. The skin looked stretched thin, grayish-white like it had never felt sunlight. It didn't move. Didn't shake. Just rested there like it belonged. I didn't scream, didn't breathe. I turned the key. The van roared to life. I threw it in reverse, spun the wheel hard, and the tires kicked up wet leaves and dirt until I was back on the pavement. The undercarriage scraped, but the van held. A few minutes later, I hit a junction with an actual road sign and veered onto the first route I recognized. No idea how far I'd gone. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Eventually, I found a gas station near Larch Hollow, lights still on, guy behind the counter mopping the floor. I didn't get out, just parked under the canopy and waited. Sun came up at 6:20. I stayed until then. I never saw the hand again. I called out the rest of the week. Told the office the brakes were acting up. They didn't push. I didn't offer details. We were doing an overnight drive through a patch of Appalachia. It was me, my girlfriend Lena, and her brother Isaac. We'd left Louisville that afternoon, planning to reach her parents' house in North Carolina by early morning. By about 2 in the morning, Isaac had completely passed out in the back. Lena was half asleep, leaning against the passenger window, her hoodie pulled up and her knees tucked in. I was the only one still awake, mostly because I'd loaded up on too much gas station coffee and sunflower seeds, and now I was just grinding through the quiet hours. That stretch of road was strange, not spooky, just off. It kept switching between narrow asphalt and gravel without any signs warning you. The trees pressed in close on both sides, like the road had been carved out reluctantly and never properly finished. I hadn't seen another car in almost an hour. And then suddenly, I did. Up ahead, maybe 50 yards, there was a dark green sedan pulled off on the shoulder. It wasn't wrecked, no skid marks, no crumpled bumper, but it was parked at a weird angle, like someone had swerved to stop and then didn't bother correcting. Its headlights were on. The engine was running. I slowed down a little as I passed. The windows were fogged slightly, and I couldn't see anyone in the driver's seat. I checked the mirrors. Still no movement. I reached over and nudged Lena's arm. "Hey, there's a car back there." "Engine's on, but I didn't see anyone inside." She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and sat up slowly. "What kind of car?" "It looked like a green sedan." "Late 90s maybe. No one was in the front seat." "You want to go back?" I hesitated. "Kind of feels like we should. What if someone's hurt?" She nodded, still waking up. "Yeah, let's just check." Better than ignoring it. I found a good place to turn around a little up the road and headed back. I told myself there was probably nothing. Somebody stopped to pee in the woods, or their phone died and they went to look for a signal. Something normal. But when we came up to it again, it hadn't changed. Same angle, headlights on, engine humming quietly. I pulled over behind it and left our engine running. I told Lena to stay inside just in case, and I walked up to the driver's side. The gravel felt cold under my sneakers. That part sticks with me for some reason. How the air felt colder right next to the car, even though it wasn't that cold out. The door was locked. I leaned down and cupped my hands against the window. The inside was spotless. No one in the front, no one in the back. No clutter, no signs of anything having happened. It was weirdly sterile, except for one thing. There was a purse on the passenger seat, a large black one, sitting upright. Like someone had just stepped out for a second, meant to come right back. I stepped away, walked back to our car, and told Lena. She frowned, watching the other car like it might move if she looked away. So what do we do? I shrugged. I could call it in. Let the sheriff know. Before we could decide, headlights appeared behind us. An old pickup truck pulled up slowly, its engine louder than ours. The guy driving rolled down his window as he came level with us. Probably late 50s. Camo jacket. Weathered face. He was chewing on something and eyeing the sedan like he already knew it didn't belong there. "Y'all okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "We were just checking this car. Engine's on, but no one's inside." He stared past me for a long second, then spat onto the gravel. "I saw that same damn car 10 minutes ago," he said, "going the other direction. Still nobody in it," I said. "Locked. Purse on the seat." He muttered something under his breath, couldn't make it out, and shifted into gear. "That ain't right," he said, and then he drove off. Just like that. The moment he left, the whole thing started to feel heavier, like something was leaning in on us. I didn't like it. Lena didn't either. She hugged her arms to her chest and glanced at the trees. I called the local sheriff's non-emergency line, gave them the best location I could, a nearby route number, a mile marker we'd passed. The dispatcher said someone would head out to take a look. We got back on the road, driving slower now, not talking much. Maybe 15 minutes later, those familiar flashing lights showed up in the rear view. "Already?" Lena asked. I pulled over again. A sheriff's deputy stepped out and walked up to the window. I explained that we were the ones who called about the green sedan. "I just came from that spot," he said. "You said the engine was running?" "Yeah." Car was parked off the gravel. Purse in the front seat. He looked at both of us, his expression unreadable. "There's nothing there now." "What?" "The car is gone." "No sign of it. No tire tracks, nothing." Lena shifted in her seat. We both saw it. And some guy in a truck did too. "You got a dash cam?" he asked. I handed him my phone, which had been running a dash cam app. We pulled up the video. Scrubbed back to the right time. There it was. Clear as anything. The green sedan. Headlights on. Purse visible through the window. Even me walking up to check. The deputy watched it all. Twice. Then he handed the phone back and told us to drive safe. No other questions. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That car. The way it felt like it had been waiting. Or maybe repeating something. The next afternoon, I called the sheriff's office again. Figured maybe it had been towed or someone had come to claim it. Maybe there was a simple explanation. But they had no record of a vehicle matching the description. No incident report. Nothing filed from that area at that time. Later that week, Lena's mom asked how the trip was. Just casual talk over lunch. I told her a cleaned up version, left out the more unsettling parts. When I mentioned the area, she stopped mid-chew. "You saw that car?" I paused. "What do you mean?" She got up without saying anything and went to the bookshelf, pulled out this old photo album, and flipped through it until she found a newspaper clipping. It was yellowed and taped onto the page. The headline said, "Local woman found dead along Route 47. Green Buick. Early morning. August. Purse untouched. She had a stroke," her mom said. "They think she pulled over and died with the engine still running." Took hours before anyone found her. It was the exact same spot, same kind of car. The clipping was dated 6 years ago. I didn't say much after that. I went upstairs early that night, laid awake for hours staring at the ceiling. Since then, I haven't taken a night drive through that part of the state. The first part of the drive was quiet, almost too quiet. It was late, somewhere after midnight, and I'd been on the road for about 4 hours, heading from a little town near Montwood, Kentucky to my friend Tara's place out in Bluefield, West Virginia. The car I drive isn't new. It's got about 200,000 miles and a weird rattle that comes and goes when it feels like it, but it's never let me down. I had enough gas, a giant thermos of gas station coffee I grabbed back in Elmore, and a playlist I'd thrown together mostly out of nostalgia. I figured if I kept moving, I'd hit Bluefield right around sunrise. After about 2 hours of smooth highway, the road started getting tighter. The exits disappeared. Streetlights thinned out until they were gone entirely. That's normal for rural Appalachia, though. It's just how the roads are. Trees pressing closer, shoulders vanish. Your headlights start to feel like the only real thing around you, and if you're not used to it, it can get weird fast. Somewhere after 1 in the morning, I passed a crooked wooden sign for something called Shays Ridge Overlook. I pulled over mostly because my right leg was going numb. It wasn't a fancy pull-off, just a lumpy patch of gravel, a busted railing, and this metal information plaque so rusted you'd have to invent the text yourself. I stepped out and stretched my arms until my back cracked. It was supposed to be a scenic view, but all I could see was dark. Just layers of black, no stars, no town lights, no horizon. It was like staring into a hole. I guess the valley dropped off steep, but even then, you'd expect some kind of glow. It just felt empty. I stood there, watching the nothing for maybe half a minute before I heard footsteps behind me. They weren't fast or loud, but I noticed right away, slow and spaced apart, like someone walking on loose gravel but trying not to make too much noise. I turned, expecting to see another late-night traveler stretching their legs, maybe a trucker pulling off for a nap. But there was nobody, just my car, silent, still lit from the overhead light. No other vehicles, no movement in the trees. I waited a beat, then walked a slow circle around my car, trying not to spook myself. It felt silly even while I was doing it. I mean, what was I hoping to find? Someone crouching behind the bumper? I didn't see anything, but when I got back in, the dome light didn't click on like it normally does. It came on late, just half a second, too slow. Not broken, just off. Like it had to think about it. I sat there with the engine idling, watching the dashboard, waiting for my GPS to catch back up. But it didn't. The map was frozen. No movement, no recalculating, no arrival time. Just the little arrow stuck in the middle of nowhere. I tried refreshing it. Nothing. No signal. No change. I told myself it was fine. I knew the general direction. And honestly, I just wanted to get off that turnout and back onto the road where I could keep moving. So I did. I eased back onto the 2-lane and headed east, deeper into the mountains. That's when things got strange. The road felt wrong. Not in a dramatic, everything's on fire kind of way, just subtly off. The trees leaned in so close it felt like they were moving, like they were swallowing the road ahead. And I started getting this odd sense that I'd seen certain spots before. Like, I passed this bent piece of guardrail on a tight left curve. A couple minutes later, I passed what looked like that exact same bend, same guardrail, same shape. Then again, and again. But there weren't any signs. No intersections, nothing to prove I was looping, just road. I was starting to feel anxious, like maybe I'd gotten turned around somehow, when I spotted headlights behind me. At first, I felt this wave of relief. Another car. Maybe they knew the area better. I slowed down slightly, hoping they'd catch up. They didn't. They stayed back just far enough that I couldn't make out the car, just the glow. Pale, steady, like they were pacing me. I kept checking my mirror, half expecting them to speed up or back off, but they didn't do either. They just sat there, distant but visible. I tried switching radio stations, hoping for some company, even if it was just a terrible late-night commercial, all static. I let it play for a bit, more for the background noise than anything, and kept driving. Then the headlights vanished. Not dimmed, not turned off, just gone. I hadn't seen a turnoff or hill they could have gone over. 1 second they were there, the next they weren't. That's when I passed the man on the shoulder. He wasn't waving or signaling. He didn't even seem aware of me. He stood perfectly still, arms straight at his sides, staring into the trees like he was listening to something far off. His eyes were wide, his mouth too. It looked like he'd been caught mid-sentence, frozen there. I slowed out of instinct, looked at him as I passed. In my rearview mirror, he wasn't there. I gripped the wheel harder. My palms were sweaty, and I realized I'd stopped breathing evenly. I forced myself to inhale through my nose, like that would somehow balance things out. Then, maybe 5 minutes later, another man. Same stance, same silence, different flannel shirt, same empty, wide-open stare. Every few minutes, I passed someone standing motionless on the side of the road, always on the shoulder, always staring into the forest, always alone. Their clothes changed, jackets, hats, boots, but their posture never did, and my headlights never hit them head-on. I only saw them in the last instant, just at the edge of visibility, like they were waiting outside the light. Eventually, the road dipped down between two ridges and crossed a narrow bridge. It wasn't big, just wide enough for 2 cars, but it creaked under me like it had been holding its breath for years. Midway across, my car died. I sat there in total silence, heart thudding so hard it felt like it echoed inside the car. Then I saw them. Across the bridge, just at the far end, there were people, not standing, kneeling. Rows of them, doubles, all crouched low to the ground, facing me, still. Their faces were pale, blank, just barely lit by the moon or whatever ambient light made it through the trees. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. Eventually, I reached down and fumbled around in the door pocket for my flashlight. When I flicked it on and shined it ahead, there was nothing, just trees. Thick forest on all sides, and my car sitting in the middle of a dirt clearing. No path behind me, no path ahead. It was like the road had never been there at all. I got out, legs shaking just slightly, and stepped onto the ground. It was soft, leafy, cold. I walked a few feet out, just far enough to turn in a slow circle. Nothing. No tire tracks. No sounds. Just that heavy, closed-in silence that feels more like pressure than quiet. I got back in the car, not because I thought it would work, but because I didn't know what else to do. Turned the key. It started. Just like that. Dashboard lit up, headlights clicked on. The radio whispered static again. And the GPS, it came back to life. The map looked different, like it had skipped ahead, said I was 20 miles from Bluefield, on a state route I didn't remember merging onto. I didn't question it. I drove, didn't stop, didn't look around, didn't speak. When I got to Terrace, I told her there was construction and I needed to crash. She didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any. I slept until evening and left the next morning without mentioning it. Since then, I've never taken that route. We were somewhere out in rural West Virginia, past Fayetteville, but not quite to the state line, winding through back roads that barely counted as roads. It was after midnight. Just me, my cousin Tessa, and our friend Caleb stuffed into a silver sedan that had seen better decades. We weren't on a road trip or anything cool like that. Tessa had dropped out of college and needed help moving her stuff back home. Her roommate bailed last minute, so Caleb and I volunteered to help her drive. We thought we could just keep going east until we hit something useful. That was the logic. Then we saw a sign. Green metal, reflective lettering, Partridge Hollow, 5 miles. I remember it because of the holes. At first I thought they were bullet holes. This was West Virginia after all, but they weren't quite right. They were too clean. Perfect circles, tight clusters, not random like someone took pot shots from a truck window. They looked, placed, but we were tired and low on gas and didn't have a better option, so we kept going. Tessa was asleep by then, curled in the back seat with a hoodie balled up under her head. I was in the front, watching trees lean in toward the road like they were trying to listen in. Caleb didn't say much, just kept both hands on the wheel and his eyes ahead. A few minutes later, the road dipped into this little ravine. It felt like we were dropping into a bowl. Still no signs of life. Just more forest. Then we saw it, a gas station. It looked abandoned. Metal roof, old school pumps with the dials that spin numbers instead of digital screens. No signs, no open lights, nothing to say it was even a business anymore. Except for this old red soda machine glowing quietly out front, humming like it was the only thing keeping the place tethered to the present. Caleb slowed down. I asked if he was actually planning to stop, and he just tapped the gas gauge. We were running on fumes. I didn't love the idea, but I couldn't argue with it. We hadn't seen another station in maybe 30 miles. The pumps, of course, were completely dead. The kind of dead that says no one's even tried to fix them in years. The handles were dangling like snapped bones, hoses curled up stiff and dry. Tessa woke up as we rolled to a stop. She sat up, looked around, and gave me that, "Where the hell are we?" look. Caleb got out to try the store. The glass door didn't budge. I told him we should go. But then he pointed off to the right, just past the main building. There was a shed. Small, wooden, a little crooked, but there was a light on inside. A single bulb behind a window covered in grime. It looked like it was trying to shine through wax paper. He figured someone might be living back there. Maybe they had a landline or could point us to a working station. He didn't wait for input, just headed toward it. Tessa stayed in the car. I went after him. There wasn't really a path, just wet leaves, shattered glass, chunks of rubber, the occasional tire half sunk into the ground. It smelled like wet bark and something metallic. As we got closer, the air changed, got colder, like that dense cold you feel in old basements where the walls sweat. It felt like we weren't supposed to be walking there. The shed door was already open a few inches. Caleb knocked. No answer. He looked at me, then nudged the door open. It creaked, nothing dramatic, just the tired protest of wood and rust. Inside, it was cramped. Shelves lined the walls, covered in dusty cans and tangled rope. Tools hung crooked on pegs, some of them so old I couldn't tell what they were meant for. There was a smell in there, like paper that had been left out in the rain, mixed with that stale, sweet scent you sometimes get in storage units, like something was rotting, but politely. In the middle of the floor was an old rotary phone, beige plastic, cracked near the base. It was off the hook, hanging by the cord, like someone had just dropped it mid-call. The bulb above it flickered every few seconds, just enough to make everything stutter in your vision. Then we heard a thump. From the far corner. Caleb turned toward the sound. "Probably a raccoon," he said, almost like a question. He stepped forward and pulled out his phone for light. There was something under a tarp, lumpy low. He gave it a light kick. The tarp slid halfway off. Beneath it were stacks of clothes, children's clothes, all neatly folded, brand new, tags still on. They weren't dusty or moldy or stained. They didn't match the rest of the shed. We both stood there for a second, processing. Then another thump. This one from outside. Behind the shed. We didn't talk, didn't plan, just turned and left. Tessa had the car running. Her eyes were wide. Before we could ask, she said someone had stepped out from the trees across the road while we were gone. Just stood there, half in shadow, then gone. Like they stepped backward into the dark. I told her to drive. We sped out of there so fast the tires kicked up gravel like gunfire. After a while, I glanced at Caleb. He was gripping the wheel too tight. We didn't say much else until we saw real civilization again. A gas station with working lights. An open diner. People. None of us slept that night. In the morning, over coffee, we tried to look it up. Partridge Hollow. Nothing came up. The first time I drove through the Appalachians at night, I figured all those old roadside stories were just small-town superstition. I was moving from a little place outside Dayton to start a new job in eastern North Carolina. My plan was simple: pack everything into my old gray sedan, fill up on gas, grab a couple of energy drinks, and just drive straight through. By the time I crossed into West Virginia, it was around midnight. Somewhere near a turnout called Pine Hollow, I noticed someone walking along the shoulder. A man, maybe. Hard to tell at first. He had on a brown jacket, head tilted down like he was counting his steps. I slowed up, instinctively. Out there, this late, it could have been someone in trouble. But the second my headlights hit him, the light just passed through. Clean through. The shape flickered, turned thin like smoke, and vanished. I actually said, "What the hell?" out loud. My hands were shaking a little on the wheel. I pulled over just past the turnout, killed the engine, and sat there. My mind tried to give me every logical explanation at once. Fog, fatigue, reflection, exhaustion. I'd been driving for hours after all. So I opened the door, stepped out, and looked back down the road. Empty. No sound but my engine cooling, little ticks echoing off the trees. I stood there long enough for the cold to crawl through my jacket. Then I laughed once, nervously, and told myself it was just a trick of the headlights. I got back in and kept driving. For the next half hour or so, everything went back to normal. I even put some music on to fill the silence, though it barely helped. The road just kept winding and winding, the same curves repeating until I wasn't sure if I was looping over the same stretch again. That's when I glanced at the dashboard and saw the fuel gauge had dropped by half. That didn't make sense. I hadn't even driven that far since I last filled up. I started running through possibilities. Leak, faulty gauge, maybe I'd just missed a fill-up. The next turnout I saw, I pulled in and turned off the car. I got out, crouched down, and checked underneath with my phone flashlight. No dripping. The ground was dry. The fuel line was clean. When I stood up, I caught movement in the rearview mirror. Someone walking behind the car. I spun around instantly. Nothing. Just the fog thickening along the road. I got back in, locked the doors, and turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. The dash lights flickered once, then everything went black. No radio, no clock, nothing. I hadn't left anything running. The air around me felt off, heavy like it was, pressing against the windows. Then I heard it. A slow scraping sound across the back bumper. It wasn't loud, just steady, like a branch dragging along the metal. I froze. My hand hovered over the ignition even though the car was dead. Another scrape followed, longer this time, ending with a dull, soft thud at the trunk. I wanted to believe it was just something sliding off the road, but it sounded deliberate. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I just watched the rearview mirror, waiting for any sign of movement. When I finally looked down at my phone, the screen said, "No service." I tapped it anyway, just to see the light. The glow reflected off the windshield, and in that faint reflection, there was a shape behind me. Not clear, just an outline in the back seat. I turned so fast my phone slipped out of my hand and hit the floor. I grabbed it again, shining the light around. Empty. Just the jacket I'd thrown in earlier. That was enough. I got out, slammed the door, and started walking up the road. My breath came out in thick clouds, and the air had that cold, wet bite that sticks to your clothes. I couldn't see far ahead. Maybe a few yards before the fog swallowed everything. But I kept going, counting my steps out loud like a kid afraid of losing their place in a game. I told myself if I just kept walking, I'd get a signal. Maybe see headlights, anything. I don't know how long I walked before I saw it. Another car pulled over on the opposite side of the road. Its hazard lights blinked weakly, fading in and out. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing, no movement. I crossed over, waving my phone light just to make sure they saw me coming. The closer I got, the more wrong it felt. The car looked familiar. Same shape, same gray paint, same dent on the front bumper from where I'd hit a post back in Ohio. My stomach dropped. I leaned in and checked the license plate. It was my plate. I stumbled back a few steps, turned toward the road, and through the fog I could still see my wheeled car where I'd left it. Both cars were there, mine and the copy. One dark, one blinking. Then the door on the copy opened. The driver's side. It creaked open halfway, paused, then started closing itself again. No sound but the slow click of the latch locking shut. The hazard lights blinked twice more, then went out completely. I ran. I don't even remember deciding to run, my legs just took over. The fog felt thicker than air. like I was pushing through it. My heart hammered in my chest, and my ears rang so loud it drowned out everything else. After what felt like forever, my phone light caught the edge of a green highway sign, rest area, 2 miles. I kept running, didn't look back once. By the time I reached the rest area, the lot was empty, except for a single semi idling under a buzzing light. I didn't bother the driver. I just sat down by the vending machines, shaking, waiting for morning. When the sun came up, I walked back toward the car. There was only one, mine. Exactly where I'd left it. It started right up on the first try. The gas gauge read full. I drove the rest of the way to North Carolina that day. Didn't tell anyone. I didn't even let myself think about it much after that, just focused on unpacking, starting work, keeping busy. But last month, I had to take a different route through that same stretch of mountains for a client visit. I stopped at a little roadside diner called Dottie's. Place smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease, comforting in its own way. The man behind the counter was old white hair, heavy-set, a faded apron that said best coffee in Boone County. We got to chatting while he filled my cup. He glanced at my car keys on the counter and said, "You come through Pine Hollow?" I said, "Yeah." "Why?" He stopped pouring, stared at me for a moment, and asked quietly, "You didn't stop, did you?" I hesitated, then said, "Once." He nodded slowly, like he already knew the answer. Then he said, "People who stop there always see themselves. Sometimes they don't leave." He didn't explain, didn't need to. The look on his face said enough. I left a few bills on the counter, didn't finish my coffee, and drove off before the sun went down.